Welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. This is web editor Nicole Raleigh, and today I have as guest Vinay Patel, an innovative pharmacist who set out to transform the healthcare industry. Welcome, Vinay.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole. It's an honor to be a guest on your podcast.
So today we'll be discussing the intricacies of drug pricing and accessibility in the United States, informed by Vinay's time on the front lines, so to speak, running a home delivery pharmacy that served 15,000 patients per month. Before we sink our teeth into all of that, though, Vinay, perhaps you could introduce yourself a little for listeners and describe the journey that took you to doing what you do today.
Absolutely, Nicole. So I'm a pharmacist by background. I've been a pharmacist for, close to 20 years now, and a licensed practicing pharmacist here in the U.S. And what we've seen and sort of the journey that I've been on is I've worked in various different areas of pharmacy. I've worked in home delivery pharmacy, as you mentioned, worked in health system pharmacies, in state-based organizations that manage pharmacies, pharmacy programs, worked in physician practices to set up pharmacy services and consulting, and worked in academia, taught medical and pharmacy students and residents, and seen all of these different areas of pharmacy and practicing in all these different settings. It was clear that the influence and the control of the pharmacy benefit companies really play a role in how affordable medicines are for patients, and really the financial viability of pharmacies, community pharmacies that serve their communities and dispense medications, because they really affect those two major touch points or intersections in healthcare for pharmacy. So we sought out, a group of myself and a group of pharmacists sought out to help solve that problem initially in 2018, when we created the first to date cost plus reimbursement model for pharmacy benefits. And we went to the employer market as really a not untapped, but a market that has a lot of influence in how healthcare is shaped and the cost of healthcare for over close to 55% of folks that get their healthcare through their employers. And we said, look, here's how the drug pricing model works. Here's why it's complex and confusing. And there's a black box around it that no one understands, because there's dozens of ways that middlemen like pharmacy benefit companies make money on these medications. And we're going to make it clear and transparent. We don't control the cost of these drugs, but we'll show you exactly what the cost is that pharmacies pay for these drugs. And then we'll have a fixed fee that we dispense, and you'll have just a model that you can rely on. You know exactly what these drugs cost. And then we'll work in the back end to make sure that you access drugs for the lowest net cost possible, taking into account all the discounts and rebates and other models to access medications. From there, we ended up pivoting away this year to a model that is supporting advanced primary care and pharmacy services and drug savings programs for large employers across the country. Now I represent the Proactive MD on-site, near-site clinic model as their chief pharmacy officer, and we have embedded virtual clinical pharmacists in each of these clinics that support these large employers to provide consults to clinicians, to provide consults to patients and education, and drug savings programs to find them alternative ways to save from these drugs.
Thank you, Vinay. Now, as you've been suggesting you're on a bit of a quest to decode the complicated world of prescription drug pricing. And indeed, listeners, if you've ever questioned why these same medication costs varying prices for different people at the pharmacy, or why drug prices have soared over the past 20 years, today Vinay is, as he suggested, going to dive into that and offer some solutions. He's going to provide some intriguing stories to share with us about crafting innovative solutions for employers, revitalize struggling independent pharmacies, and implement, as he also suggested, hybrid care models that are making healthcare more attainable for everyone. To kick things off then, Vinay, when it comes to revolutionizing drug pricing, what are some of the innovative models that could afford the pharma industry greater accessibility?
So, from our perspective, when it comes to pharma, their objective is to create life-saving therapeutics for as many people or as many conditions as possible. And really, the barrier comes to how to get that medication to as many folks as possible in the US. And almost always, 99% or 95% of the time, pharma has to go through insurance companies or pharmacy benefit companies to get market share access. And to get that access, they have to pay rebates or, kickbacks, for lack of a better word, to these insurance companies so that they can get as large of a market share or accessibility for their medications as possible. And they're competing with other pharma organizations. I really believe that on the innovation side, what we'll start to see going forward is more of a direct to consumer model. Of course, we have the administration today pushing for just sort of standardized pricing from the most favored nations to also accessing drugs at better discounts or setting up direct to consumer models, programs that pharma can offer through directly to consumers. There's also an opportunity to, through models that we've set up, eliminate rebates altogether from the system. I think that rebates create a lot of complexity that's unnecessary, confounds really the price of drugs, medications, for different consumers and for payers like employers that are paying for these health plan costs, the majority of them. And so I think that there's an opportunity for pharma to go direct to the consumer and then also set up models with employers that help them understand here's the cost and here's the access. I think that we have to figure out how we get them market access without limiting it to just one pharma company, and make sure that there's equitable access and sort of reward, whoever has the best product and best outcomes.
Is there something else you'd like to add there?
So the value-based contracting is part of this model as well, where we're saying, as we get better outcomes, we want to pay pharma more for how they're taking care of the population.
Thank you, Vinay. So I was going to say, actually, with this notion of equitable accessibility, I wonder, how are biosimilars driving pharmaceutical innovation and also reducing health costs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So biosimilars are of high focus, especially in the last couple of years. We saw the number one medication, specialty medication, Humira, have a biosimilar access in 2023. And what you found is that, again, there was companies that were creating medications that were a duplicate, essentially, of what Humira was, and they needed to get access to the market. So in 23 and probably most of 24, until the large insurance companies own their own manufacturing of biosimilars, they didn't really allow access to the biosimilar market, or they access products that were still very expensive but had high rebates that went back to them. Now that all the big three insurance companies own their own biosimilar manufacturing, they're actually preferring the biosimilars that they manufacture and own and on their formularies. But in essence, just like we have brand drugs like Lipitor that have its own generic manufacturers, when you have a lot more people, a lot more companies manufacturing the same medication, the price comes down. Similarly, what we saw with Humira is, as we have more manufacturers making a duplicate or copycat version of the Humira medication, which is what biosimilars are, the price has also come down. Average price for Humira is somewhere around $80,000 to $90,000 a year. With the biosimilar now, you could essentially get the same medication for about $14,000 total drug cost for the year with these medications, or less. It's somewhere around there, $10,000 to $14,000.
I mean, that's an incredible cost saving. So if we stick with cost reduction just a bit longer, when it comes to rethinking prescription drug affordability, can you provide some other more creative solutions for a healthier future?
So, there's an opportunity to have manufacturers work directly with pharmacies. Today, they work through wholesalers to dispense medications. There's certain therapeutics that, and in the secondary market as well, this may not apply to the largest manufacturers in the world, but for the secondary market, where we have access to pharmacies that can, essentially manufacturers that can drop ship medications to pharmacies, set pricing so that it's a direct price that the pharmacies pay, and then essentially say, look, because we have this direct shipping to pharmacies, we can offer better pricing to a certain group of pharmacies if patients can access the medications through those pharmacies. And then the direct to consumer models as well are out there. And then, there's various different ideas and models that are being thrown out there that are still in its infancy, that really haven't come to light yet, but we're working through them with pharma and figuring out how we can get access to a model that's different, again, that does away with rebates and that can help provide direct access to these medicines.
Thank you, Vinay. So let's sort of concentrate now on the transformation of pharmacies themselves. What can you tell us about this? What does this transformation look like, from medication dispensaries to comprehensive health hubs?
So we've seen in the country that there's a shortage of primary care providers, and we need to provide access, especially in suburban rural areas where it's becoming increasingly difficult for people who live there in these communities to access just primary care services, your basic general practitioner to take care of your day-to-day needs for your health care. And what we've seen is that pharmacies could play a vital role in supplanting or being an additional resource where members could get access to care. And that's where these health hubs come into play. There's a lot of locally owned community pharmacies outside of the chain pharmacies. About a third of all the pharmacies in the country are still mom and pop pharmacies, essentially, where they could offer access to either a provider that's a prescriber that's on site that can provide primary care a couple times a week, couple days a week, or in that space, or they could provide access through telehealth services where a member could get various services in person at the pharmacy, like blood draw services to do blood testing, and then also access through those results, access a clinician that can help review those blood test results, and then also provide ongoing care. And the clinician would be a nurse practitioner or physician's assistant, or even a physician that could help consult and do their care virtually while also having access to certain in-person services. It doesn't cover everything, but it could cover the majority of care that a patient could need, and provide them access at a pharmacy where they could go. And then if they need treatment, they already have the pharmacy right there to get their medications. So a couple different models there where, phlebotomist comes on site, a clinician is either there in person or virtually to provide the medical care in addition to additional services they could get at these pharmacy locations.
Thank you, Vinay. And thank you for explaining the telehealth possibility, this technology able to enhance access and efficiency when it comes to patient care by providing virtual provision of that care. So my final question, looking to the future now, what further transformative possibilities do you see on the horizon for pharmacies and indeed for pharmacists?
What we see coming in the next couple years, just 3 years, the 1 to 3 year horizon, is that the integration of pharmacies into the care team. So today you have a nurse and a medical assistant, and you have a provider, a clinician, whether that's a nurse practitioner, physician assistant, or physician, providing your medical care. And we really believe that we can now integrate pharmacies and pharmacists into that care team, so that when you go to the pharmacy, there's data that they're collecting. There are clinical activities that occur at these pharmacies that we need to incorporate onto the care team to say, look, if a clinician has a question or a patient has an issue with their medication or concern or question, they can just pull in a pharmacist from their community or wherever the pharmacist would be best resource to integrate into the care team. They could pull them in and say, we have this issue, we have this problem, help us solve this problem on the care team with everyone else, and integrate those services, that consultation, the knowledge that a pharmacist has to really provide better care, better outcomes to patients, and really see that as the future coming on board. And now that we've seen various different models of pharmacy benefit companies sort of eroding the business model of dispensing medications, we really have to pivot to providing services and how we can enhance the care of patients across the spectrum, especially for those that are in highest need, highest cost, highest risk, to really embed and integrate the pharmacists onto this care team.
Thank you, Vinay. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Nicole.
And that concludes another episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous installments at pharmaphorum.com/podcasts. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Podbean, and pretty much wherever else you download your other podcasts from. Just search for pharmaphorum and follow and hit subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins. And do follow us on Blue Sky and LinkedIn at pharmaphorum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.